Hopefulness 2.0, January 8th. Coffee with sugar and a little bit of salt. And then a mixture of, this is basically half and half. Maybe a little bit more milk than half, but cool that down. It was already cooling down a bit because I made it, I don't know, 10-15 minutes ago. Yeah, because now it's just nice and lukewarm, which is actually the temperature I like my coffee, because I'd rather just kind of drink it. Instead of, sip it, waiting for it to finally cool off to then drink it. I got some pork and beans plus baked beans plus some extra bacon that I had chopped up and put in here. This is leftovers from yesterday. That, on the other hand, is hot. It is approximately 5:30 in the morning, which is an ungodly / reasonable hour, so I don't even know. I gotta do dishes, so I might as well do them now. Now think about it. Because over here is what remains with the bacon. Yeah. So I'm gonna wash those. Wash the cutting board. Cutting board will probably sit out for a little bit though. God damn it. So one thing I hate about this kitchen is that I don't really have anywhere to hang my towels. Because this is like the most central spot of everywhere. And there's nowhere to put them other than the back of this damn chair that does not hold the towels well. So now that I've had a couple of days using and dirtying up some of those new storage deli containers, I'm gonna stick them in this dishwasher and see how they fare. I didn't realize. So this is the sort of utensil tray. I know it had these. I didn't realize it had this little cover as well. I've been using this dishwasher now for at least 18 months, I want to say. Because my landlady got it installed, I want to say like a month or two after I started working my last job. The Substance Abuse Treatment Center. One cool thing, this rice cooker container, and this lid, oops, hold on, actually fits. And it's like just right too. Like, it's easier to put on this than it is to sometimes put it on the storage container that it goes on. So like when I make bread, for instance, as long as this is clean, once I cut a few pieces of the bread off, I can stick the whole thing in here. Works out great. But then obviously I use it for rice too, so. Hot. Not hot. Surprisingly, those don't really contrast each other enough for it to be weird. I'm sure anybody who happens to see that might think it's weird, but like, I don't like having like donuts or coffee cakes or anything like that with coffee. I can't stand it. It doesn't balance it out for me. I don't know exactly the right terminology, phrasing, whatever. I'll have to try to figure that out one day. But it is an unpleasant experience for me. Whenever I have a super sweet item like a donut or a coffee cake or something. This is more on the savory side, obviously, because, you know, but I mean, it does have some sweetness, and I also have sweetness in here. Now, one could say, well, maybe you shouldn't put any salt or any sugar in your coffee, and so maybe it'll balance it out there too. It's not just the sweetness, though. It's something else. There's the consistency aspect of it too. Like, fuck dunking those things into coffee. That just feels like it ruins both. I mean, like when I make lemon curd and some, and then I'll also sometimes make some pastry cream, the vanilla pastry cream. When I mix those together, I don't know why, I feel like the shirt's on backwards. It's not, but it feels like it. Maybe it's just because I'm fat. Anyway, when I mix the lemon curd and the vanilla pastry cream together, they kind of mute each other out a lot. And so you don't really get a strong taste of either, but it's still good. The thing about either of those things, though, is the flavor intensity is kind of the point. And so in that way, it quote-unquote ruins the flavor. Worst thing about flour bags is the flour bag itself. How much of a pain they are in one capacity or another. So yeah, it's Monday, January 8th. It's my first like legit week back to work. Although last week was like, you know, the first week back, but apparently I was supposed to have like January 1st as a paid holiday too, so and then the week prior to that is like a big old paid week. So hopefully, you know, paycheck will be nice and fat. Help me save up and all kinds of crap. I need to check to see if my food stamp card is out there or not. I did make some ice cream too. Used the evaporated milk and I used the cream. And then I ate it all yesterday. It was good. You know, basically 5 ingredients if you want to consider it that. It was evaporated milk. It was cream. It was sugar. Those are the 3 main components. Then there was vanilla for flavoring, of course. And then salt for an extra boost. You know, I'm not dumping in like a whole ass teaspoon of salt. It was kind of like a bigger pinch worth. It's not something I'll be doing again for a while. Because I mean, you know, I had filled this whole thing up and then had like probably an extra quarter's worth, maybe a little bit more. So like the day I made it, and I had finished around like a little after midnight on, I want to say, Sunday morning. No, not Sunday morning. Saturday morning. That makes more sense, because then I ate it all yesterday, which was Sunday. Because then I waited. Once I filled this up, I closed it up, stuck it in the freezer, and had it sit for 24 hours, just like Adam says in his video, and it works. Like, it worked out really good. The ice bath situation was interesting. It functioned exactly as it needed to. So, like, if I want to do it again, I know what I can do to make it work. Anywho, also, like, it's a good idea to not just use water, or not just use ice and salt, but salt, ice, and water, because water will help with greater conductivity, because then it will help to envelop. It's kind of like when Mythbusters did a quick experiment, and I think they were trying to super chill beer as fast as possible, and they learned that, you know, through their experimentation, that if you want to cool down your beers as quickly as possible, like, let's say you just got to the store and you're on your way to a party of some kind, and you didn't, you know, maybe you were supposed to bring beer, maybe you need to bring some extra, because, like, maybe somebody's calling you up and like, hey dude, can you bring some extra beer, you know, blah blah blah, you know, we're kind of running low, whatever it is. So one thing you can do is you can go to the store, you can get just a big old box of salt, and if you get rock salt, it's cheaper because it has all kinds of impurities and stuff that people don't want to, you know, generally consume. You know, ice cream salt. It's just salt that has extra shit in it that you don't want to put in your food. And because you're not going to be consuming it, it's not really an issue. So you get yourself like a bag of ice, you get yourself, you know, one of them like crappy styrofoam coolers, you get like maybe 3 or 4 6-packs or something. And then that's salt. And then what you can do is you just dump them, you know, like maybe layer a little bit of ice in there, throw in all of your, like, throw in some salt, throw in all of your beer, and then do that repeated as well, you know, dump in as much ice as you can, throw in more salt. That'll be good, but then if you, like, spray on some water or something and let that whole thing fill up, like, if you can dump as much ice as possible in there and then throw in some extra water, maybe fill that up, you will have faster, colder beer within like 20 minutes. It's stupid fast. So that's kind of what I did, is that, because I had those just, where's that? It's in the sink, but I've got another one. So I had one of these pretty much filled, you know, about maybe like an inch up with water, and then stuck it in the freezer. I always have this one in the freezer because this is the one that I use whenever I make hard-boiled eggs. So if I remember to, when I start boiling the water for the eggs, I'll fill this up, you know, pretty high up with water, and then just stick it in the freezer. So then, after roughly 20 minutes, because the water takes a while to boil. Now, if I want to go faster, I could just use this bad boy. This heats up water to boiling much faster than the stovetop. And I can get, it says the max is 1 liter. I can get 1 liter in there, no problem. What I can also do is just like maybe fill that up. Wait, so there's 2 methods generally what I'll do. Most of the time with hard-boiled eggs, I'm just going to fill up my pot with water and let it sit on the stove until it starts to boil, and it takes about 10 minutes or so because of the amount of water that I use. Because I also incorporate a lot of eggs, usually about 6 to 8. 6 is my minimum, unless I have fewer. Typically I try to get 8 though, because with 8, then I've got, you know, a decent stockpile for the coming days. In fact, I think I still have some eggs. No, I guess I finished those off. Oh well, I still have, you know, 2 whole I've got like 60 eggs sitting in the fridge right now, so it's not a problem. Um, but, like I said, I'll get the water boiling. I'll have it boil for, like I said, about 10 minutes. That's usually enough time. And then once it's boiling, I'll drop in the eggs. Put those in for anywhere between 10 and 11. If I've got 8, I'll do it for 11. And the reason why I do 11 instead of 10 is because with that many more eggs, with that many eggs total, the temperature is going to drop just significantly enough where they're not going to be fully to the point of hard boiled that I like, which is like everything's set, but the yolk is not dry. It's kind of moist. If I wish I had some. They're so good. They're not jammy like some people say, because they don't have like they're not a liquid state. They're more like a jelly state almost. But just a bit beyond that. Sometimes the outer portion of the yolk is on that sort of drier side, which is okay. And so I'll have like that distinctive middle where it looks a little on the sort of jelly looking state. And they're really good that way. And it takes about 10 minutes when I've got like 6 to 8 of them in there. I put them in 11 because that gives me just enough time to get the water temp back. Like 1 minute of that should get the temp back up, and then I'll have 10 minutes of boiling time. So in that period, if I remember, sometimes I forget and I only remember when I'm putting the damn eggs in, is I'll take that bowl out. I'll keep the stuff that's in it because I've got some like package freezer thing. You know, like I got them when I think I got it was either associated with HelloFresh or it was when I bought some like this big box of like Health Aid kombucha. God, I miss kombucha, but I'm too poor right now. And I think I got like a 24 pack or something like that of kombucha, and it had various like freezer packs in them. And so I was like, well, I'm just gonna keep those because they were handy. And because at the time, especially, I was using a mini fridge, and so for like the first day, I had to still use the box that they came in because I just didn't have any space in the mini fridge for it all. And then I went downstairs because I was living at the other place that sucked. That should have been condemned. And then I put them in the fridge that was down there. But that was like the last time I used that fridge too. So anywho, because then after a little while I was mostly just using it kind of like for, because I still had money because it was during COVID and all that, and so what I would occasionally do is I would order stuff from like the Amazon Whole Foods like Shop Fresh Now thing, whatever the hell it is, and I would get like 8 or 12 kombuchas, and then typically I would also get like some cheeses and some various, you know, like deli meats, you know, your charcuterie board type meats, stuff like that. And it was just kind of like a nice little snack. And, you know, I was like playing video games and stuff and not worrying about anything. It was great. And I was making more money doing nothing, basically. It was the first few months of the pandemic, and it was great. I was prepared for the pandemic because I was poor. I had already spent pretty much all of my time by myself, so it's not like I had anything going for me. And then once the unemployment checks boosted up and started coming in, well, I was like, all right, I'm getting paid more money than most jobs I've ever had. You know, the highest paying job I ever had wasn't even technically the highest paying. It was $12 an hour, but I basically had no bills, and I was working 84 fucking hours a week. I was working as a security guard up in Alaska, and so like every day I was making, you know, what was it, $84, then 4 hours of overtime. So I was working plus 4 overtime, or yeah, 8 plus 4 overtime every day for 5 days, and then the last 2 days was just pure overtime. Um, and since I was able to pocket pretty much 95% of that, it's like, all right, no big deal. The only reason I was paying anything out of pocket was if food stamps couldn't buy it. Because I still had food stamps from being homeless. And then I was like, all right, well, I was homeless. I still got food stamps. I'm getting $1,000 a fucking week. I don't have to pay for meals. I don't have to pay rent. I'm only gonna buy things. I was trying to buy as much food stamp only stuff as I could so that I could like store it in the trailer that I was in just in case. Because like I really only had 2 meals. I had the dinner, and then I had the breakfast, because the breakfast happened at the end of my shift. Breakfast started at like, I want to say 7, and my shift ended at 7. And I think technically breakfast started at like 6:30, 6:45, something like that. And so the very end of my shift was me in the dining hall with people, which worked out really well when it comes to like observing and reporting and stuff, because like a lot of people would get up, they would get ready at like 6:30, then they would go to the dining hall 6:45, 7 o'clock, start eating and whatnot. And I gotta go. Damn it. I got some bean fibers. But yeah, so they'd be coming in, trickling in and whatnot. And so like I would chill until like 7, and most everybody who was going to be coming to breakfast was already there. And so I could listen in on whatever conversations, because it was like a at a lot of schools they have those outside trailers that are like rooms for classes. It was basically that, but it was a slightly bigger version, and it had a kitchen and all kinds of stuff that was associated with it. And that was that was the mess hall where we were at in Alaska. And like it wasn't treated for sound, and it didn't have a bunch of like stuff in it. It was just mostly empty, so like conversations were just easy to acquire, to listen to. And most of the guys, they didn't give a shit about me. Like that's the one thing that it has taken me a while to understand, is that as much as I think people hate me, they generally don't. Especially when I am interacting with them on a regular basis. At minimum, they're okay with me. They don't care. And generally, because I've got life stories that relate, they at least like me enough to talk to me. And even though I may be in a position where I have some sort of like perceived authority, I try to bridge that gap whenever I'm in those situations. One, yes, it does help the job, but I'm not sitting there like thinking about and meticulously planning and writing out how I can manipulate people and shit. It's just, that's who I am as a person. I want to connect with people because that's what we do as humans. It's like, call it evolution or whatever, but the most successful overall species, if you will, within human, one of the things that makes us successful enough as a species to continue to grow and thrive is our ability to socialize. Be it gossip, which a lot of people fucking hate, especially when they're younger, and I am a person who still occasionally has that, like, I don't like gossip, but gossip serves a purpose. It does serve, it has an evolutionary purpose. Obviously, on the smaller scale, it sucks, especially if you're talking shit about somebody, and especially if what you're saying is untrue. But that greater need for the survival of the species supersedes it for now. I'm not saying that all gossip is good, but I'm also not saying that all gossip is bad. Sometimes commiserating, gossiping, bullshitting, whatever, all of these things are just forms of bonding. They are social bonding that helps the species maintain, grow, and or thrive. And I can do it with the best of them. You know, I grew up around a lot of gossips. I didn't like most of what I was hearing, but I learned how to do it, you know. And it wasn't me, you know, again, it wasn't me going into, you know, writing notes and how to this, that, and the other. It was just, this is what my life is. This is what was around me. This is what I learned. And so I can gossip with the best of them if I need to, if I want to. I will still do my best to avoid judgmentalism, especially if it's unwarranted, or B, if I'm unaware if it can be warranted. If it is either A, legitimately or otherwise perceived to be unwarranted. You know, there's a reason why people still go to church, even though they're really not all that religious. This is community. And community is how people survive as a species. There's a reason why I play too much fucking EverQuest, because it's a form of community. It is a community that I can pick up at any time, for the most part, and bullshit and communicate with people. You know, yes, what was it? Saturday. I want to say it was like Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon. I was in one of the discussion channels on my guild's Discord. We started talking about, like, I saw somebody post that gif of the mayo where they, like, hit it. It's a squeeze bottle and they hit it and it's got little googly eyes on it and it's, like, puking out the mayo. Or at least that's what it looks like. And my response to that image created an hours long, like, it's gone on to today to a degree. Yesterday it picked back up for a little bit, but my response created an hours plus, a dozens of hours plus discussion about Miracle Whip and mayo. Because I was like, oh, what a waste of eggs. What a waste of eggs and oil. Or something like, I had... So going back towards the, like, me knowing how to communicate and manipulate, but not really thinking about it. I know how to push people's buttons without trying. I also know how to push people's buttons while trying. And this was like a combo. Like, I already have really strong opinions about mayo. I don't like it. I can't stand the taste. If it has mayo in it, I'm usually going to taste it, and it's usually going to make it taste worse for me. That's just me. And I am a Miracle Whip person. I haven't had Miracle Whip in my life since I was a kid, though. And that's how strong the opinion is of mayo versus Miracle Whip. I, to this day, still have a strong dislike of mayo. And, like, that could be spread into so many things and so many like, I don't have Miracle Whip in my life. I haven't had it in my life anymore, but I still have a stronger opinion about the opposite. Put that into politics or whatever you want. That exact thing exists, and that's why it blew up. Is because people have strong opinions, often about a thing they dislike. The opinion, and let's take it back when I was trying to go into the radio days, and before I had ever seen the movie Private Parts about Howard Stern's life. When I was in my first radio production class, my professor had, he and I had, various individual conversations. Often I would stay behind class and I would help put chairs and stuff away, and we'd bullshit about some stuff. And he had mentioned Private Parts and how, in the movie, there's this great scene with Paul Giamatti talking about Howard Stern. He's getting ratings, and like he's the one that's like upset that Howard Stern exists and thus should be off of the radio. But then one of the other guys, character actor whose name I could not know for the life of me, is talking about, he's like breaking down the ratings really quickly, and he's like, the people who like Howard Stern listen for approximately, on average, listen for like an hour and 7 minutes or something like that. And he's like, okay, so, and the top reason why they listen is because they want to know what he's going to say next. Okay, well, what about the people who hate him? People who hate him listen for like 2 hours and 30 minutes or something like that. He's like, Paul Giamatti's face is just beautiful. And he's like, what? Why? And I say, number one reason, they want to hear what he's going to say next. And that's why so many things blow up the way they do. Current day, 30 years ago, 100 years ago, doesn't matter. It's because when you hate something, you're hyperfixated on it. It is a focal point, and it bridges back to that social bonding thing. If you can find something to commiserate about, you can often find your people. Obviously, it can go to extremes where, we got, situations like 2 years ago where people who commiserate so much, they literally have fucking t-shirts made to say they want civil war on January 6th. Don't let anybody, gaslight you into thinking anything otherwise. They wanted to start some shit. Beans on the beard. But all of these things can all be often, you can't really think about it at the time that it's happening, because like a lot of things, it's just happening. You don't have time. You literally cannot think about the thing because you got to do the thing. Another survival instinct, by the way. If you are afraid of something and thus you either need to kill that thing or get the fuck out, you don't have time to figure out whether or not that thing has reasonable motive. If a tiger is coming near you, you don't think about, well, why is the tiger coming at me? Should I be psychoanalyzing the tiger's behavior? No, you need to survive. Get the fuck out. Or kill the thing, one way or another. You can psychoanalyze the situation later. Maybe like perfect example. Again, I'm using analogies because they're the way that I think. I want to say it's one of the new God of War games, and I'm like 90% certain it's Ragnarok. In the first sort of like major scene of the game, between the time of the beginning of the game and when Kratos fights the bear, there is a point where another bear is found, and then after the bear fight, you come back later and you see this other bear. It's not the same one that Kratos fought, because if you play the game, you'll know. The difference is you go back and you see that other bear has died, and it has little baby bear cubs. And it's so heartbreaking. It's so sad. Hold on, I need to check the timer. It's so absurdly sad. You see these little baby bears, and one of them's like hugging up on its mom, and it's like, oh, it's so sad. But you don't have time to think about that when you're fighting a fucking bear. You don't have the wherewithal to take that step back, think about what Mama Bear is doing. You don't have time to figure out if it's a mother or not. Not unless you're literally like a seasoned bear hunter who understands all of these things and understand this. And see, that's the difference too. Like, much of life is not. The reason why a lot of people say nobody really knows what's going on is because in a lot of ways it's true. Because at the moment, people are just trying to survive for the most part. Like, yes, a lot of times at that moment they're just trying to survive based on a lot of different experiences, and so the way that they attempt to survive can be, what's the word I'm looking for? Built, grown, but most people are just going from life moment to moment, and they're trying to figure shit out as best they can in the process. And sure, you can take, when you have that time to stop and think about your life in the past, then you can start thinking about those things. But when it comes to the day-to-day stuff, most people are not plotting and planning. Now, that is not to say that there aren't people who are plotting and planning. It's just that it's effectively tumultuous in that this group might one day and then the next day they're not, and this group over here may be one day and then they're not, and it's just this ever bubbling pot, if you will, to go back to the whole boiling water thing. One of the things that I didn't know about water and physics and temperature until like maybe 10 years ago max is that even a pot of water with no heat under it still has boiling water in it. And the reason why is because you have evaporation. You have molecules that have effectively reached 212 Fahrenheit, 100 degrees Celsius. They're at the top because everything's still jiggling. And it just so happens that some molecules have just enough energy to break the bonds and flee and thus evaporate. When you have boiling water, that means the average temperature of that specific body of water is 212. That means there's some spots that are colder, and that also means there's some spots that are hotter, hence bubbles. There's a reason why boiling water has bubbles in it, because there's some areas of that water that have turned into gas. They have more than 212 degrees Fahrenheit energy. And as such, they rise up and then the bubbles pop, and then that energy, those water molecules turn into vapor, turn into steam, and flow out. And you've got this big, huge column of steam above your pot. The same analogous idea can be said about society, just at large or in smaller groups. Going back to my EverQuest guild, okay. A couple weeks back, we were in a pretty tight. We were raiding in like the final dungeon, right? In that final dungeon, there's like there's 13 dragons in like one major area, so it breaks off into 4 sections. The bottom section, the first section, is just kind of where you enter into this dungeon. It's called the Temple of Vishan. Okay. And then as you go into the temple, you will slowly start meeting dragons of various types. First there's drakes, and then you'll start seeing some dragons. In I'm gonna ignore the west and the east wings. Those, for the most part, don't matter right now. In the north wing, before you truly get to the far north, there's like one sort of drake-like dragon. But once you pass that one up and you go into the main ring, as they call it, because it's just a giant ring of dragons with one in the center, and it's on this giant fucking cliff face where below it is just basically this caldera of lava. Okay? And in that, there's 13 dragons. Now, in the main ring, there's only 8. The other 5 are a little bit further north. But they're all dragons. They all look like your typical dragons, with the 4 legs. They walk on 4 legs and they have wings. They're massive. Well, one of them kind of. It looks more like one of the 8. It looks more like a deep sea creature. The anglerfish. But nevertheless, it's one of the big 8, if you will. And we were in a section where there's 2 dragons that are relatively close with each other. We had just finished killing the deep sea creature dragon. We were on to one of the other, very typical dragons, big blue one called Lady Miranella. And we were preparing to kill her off, and then all of a sudden, a small train of like 3 drakes just happens to show up and like wipes us out. We were not happy. Once we got hit and trained, it lost us competitive edge against the main dragon, which is what we were focusing on. The fact that we got just annihilated set us back 20 minutes easily. Because it's deep in, you can't just and in that game, you don't just kind of pop back up with all your equipment. You do that now in the newer version of the game. But for the format that we're playing, your corpse with everything on it is still there. And so you can't just get a couple of rogues or monks to just drag stuff back, because it's way the hell out there in the deepest part of the ring. And then on top of it, every time you resurrect somebody, they're going to have what's known as resurrection sickness. So they're not going to have much health. They're going to have no mana. They're not going to have any other buffs that they had. And all of these things compound on each other. Even if you've got 50 people, you got to resurrect. You got 50 people that you have to buff up. You have 50 people to heal up. They've all got to get their mana back. It takes a long time to recover from a wipe. We were already pretty on edge, because we're getting to the point where we're trying to compete for effectively the boss, and we get wrecked. That was our tipping point. That was our boiling point. Some people, myself included, were just kind of chilling, but you got other people, guild leaders, and other people who just, for whatever reason, they just get easily stressed. They're voicing opinions. They're talking shit. Blah, 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 blah. And, they are legitimately upset about this whole situation. And it fundamentally changed what we were doing for the rest of the day. Because when you've got a decent stride, even if there's some challenges and stuff, that's fine. But when you have a big setback like that, and everything was going fine, people are going to blow up. The pot is going to boil. And that will then start to expand. That boiling point, if you will expand to pretty much everybody. It got to the point where within the Discord, they created a new chat channel solely for conspiratorial thinking. Because they were who was it inside of our guild that trained us to fuck us over to prevent us from going up against the big guy? And then not only that, but one of the other guild leaders following that a couple of weeks later, so it may have been a little longer than a couple of weeks since then, but whatever, they did sort of a cleansing of the server to figure out, okay, so like here's a low bar that you have to participate in, and like nobody was aware of what was happening, save for perhaps a few. But if you didn't do what was necessary to meet that low bar, they were going to purge you from the Discord, because they were under the impression that somebody had infiltrated the guild and fucked with us. The circumstances don't make sense as to why it happened, what happened. And people were like, in the little, they called it the tinfoil cat channel, because, you know, tinfoil hat. And it's a cat-based guild. We are the kittens who say, meow. Anyway. And like people were trying to break this down, and, you know, with very little video footage of it, because like not a lot of people record, but just sometimes enough people do, and that can sometimes help and sometimes it doesn't. But that information wasn't really enough. And so there's still a lot of questions out there. And that was one of the reasons why they did the purge, because they couldn't figure something out. And so they were just trying to figure out ways to prevent it from happening. Even if, for all we know, it was just a fluke of some, you know, mechanics of the game. Who knows? But because that happened, a lot of people went overboard, or they hit their tipping point. The straw that broke the camel's back. And that is a lot of what happens in society. And, you know, look at America right now, we're kind of fucked. You know, we have a lot of things that are happening that, like, most people don't like. You know, there's things that are happening in the Supreme Court that I don't like. There's things that are happening in the, you know, the political realm, whether it's top to bottom, bottom to top, that is literally destabilizing the nature of our democratic process. As democratic as it is or isn't, you know, it's not a perfect system. There is no perfect system, but we can try to improve. But right now, we got people who are effectively trying to dismantle the system for what feels like dictatorship. And then there are people on the other side who they have a lot of their own issues that they're looking at, and it's like the pot is boiling, you know. And then there's so many other things that are going on in the world that have direct or indirect impact on our daily lives. And then if you just take a step back and look at the individuals, most people do not have a life that are even worthwhile. We're living paycheck to paycheck. We're trying to struggle just to exist. And it's like, you know, so it's no wonder we have our powder cake that is trying to blow. But it goes back to, and again, like, we still do the same behaviors. We still try to commiserate. We still try to work with each other, try to connect to each other and all that kind of stuff. And whether it's for good or for ill, that's just a thing we do. And that it helps us feel better, because that is what we have been able to accomplish evolutionarily. We have been able, we survive as a species through community. Be that community good or bad, it doesn't matter. Community is a tool, just like, you know, a stone or an arrowhead or a knife. They have the ability to create, and they have the ability to destroy. And that's one of the reasons why I put these videos out. I don't have much of a community in this, and I don't have one. But I still put them out there anyway.